Unseen tears, struggling single dad discovers pregnant CEO's shocking secret at 3 a.m. gas station. The night was drenched in darkness, a shroud that seemed to whisper secrets in the cool air. As Jake sat in his beat-up sedan parked outside the dimly lit gas station, he felt an uneasy knot twist in his stomach. He wasn't just any dad. He was a single father scraping by, but tonight, he could never have predicted what lay ahead. A sudden flickering light caught his eye, illuminating the figure of a woman stumbling out of a sleek black car. She was a vision wrapped in an expensive designer coat, her hair cascading down like molten gold, reflecting the faint light. But it was her eyes, wide and frantic, that sent a chill down his spine. Something was wrong. Jake rubbed his temples, pushing aside thoughts of his daughter at home, bundled in blankets, dreaming about fairy tales. The woman, now pacing nervously, her hands clutching her stomach, looked all too fragile. "What's happening?" he muttered under his breath. Did she need help? Just then, the sound of distant sirens echoed, slicing through the night. The tension thickened like fog. Would they get here in time? Before he could process it further, she lurched toward the convenience store, her breath coming in sharp gasps. Jake felt a pull, a mix of concern and curiosity. He followed her. As the door swung open, the soft chime of the bell announced their entrance, but Jake's heart raced. This wasn't a typical gas station stop. The air was heavy with the smell of stale coffee and something else, something sweet and not quite right. Every instinct told him to turn back, yet he stayed. Why is she here? He thought, scanning the darkened aisles. Then he saw a flash of something silver glinting at her side. Panic rose. Was that a knife? His breath hitched in his throat as he stepped closer. Whatever this woman was dealing with, it was big. Just then, she turned, catching his eye. A moment hung between them, electric and charged, the world around them fading. One question loomed large: what was this pregnant woman hiding? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash the like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The moment snapped like a rubber band. She bolted down an aisle, knocking over a small display of chips, and from behind the counter, the clerk's eyes widened with disbelief. What's wrong with her? Jake thought, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders. He took off after her, heart pounding in rhythm with the urgency of the moment. Each step drew him deeper into a web of secrets. Just as he rounded the corner, he saw her stumble, her body quaking. "Please," she gasped, her voice barely a whisper, "you have to help me." But help would come at a price, and the clock was ticking. What was she running from? Jake's pulse thumped in his ears as he reached her side, the fluorescent lights flickering ominously above. She was nearly doubled over, her hands pressing into her belly as if willing something to stay inside. "What's happening?" he asked, swallowing back the panic that clawed at his throat. I can't." She gasped for breath, her golden hair framing her face like a halo of desperation. "You don't understand. They're coming." "Who's coming?" Jake's voice dropped to a whisper, sensing the weight of her fear as though it were a tangible force between them. She glanced towards the entrance, eyes flicking nervously, and in that moment Jake felt it too, an uneasy tension, as if invisible eyes were watching them from the shadows outside. "They want my baby," she stammered, the gravity of her words sinking into Jake's chest like lead. I didn't want this." I thought. Her voice cracked, revealing the fragility beneath the facade of polished confidence. "Now I don't know how to protect him or myself." Every instinct in Jake screamed to get involved. Here was a woman in need, but how could he possibly help? He was just a dad fighting to make ends meet, not a knight in shining armor. But the desperate flicker of her eye ignited something deep inside him, a primal urge to shield her from whatever monsters lurked beyond the doors of the gas station. "What can I do?" he felt himself asking, though every rational thought urged him to keep his distance. This was not his battle. "Just stay with me," she implored, a plea that echoed in the depths of his heart. For a moment, they simply stood there, breaths mingling in the cramped space filled with flickering lights and the scent of stale snacks. The chaos felt like an intrusion on the fragile moment of connection between two strangers bound by fear. The clerk behind the register had rushed to a phone, murmuring into it, eyes darting. Jake shot him a look. "Get out of here, man!" he shouted. The clerk looked frozen, panic etched on his face, unsure if his next move should be to call for help or run for cover. Without another thought, Jake took her trembling hand. "We need to get out of here," he said, taking a step back toward the entrance. Outside, the sirens wailed closer, and silhouettes moved in the darkness. "They're here," her voice broke, dread lacing her words. "Stay close," he whispered. They bolted toward the door, but before they could cross the threshold, two towering figures appeared outside, blocking their escape. They were dressed in dark clothing, tension practically vibrating off them like static. Jake's stomach knotted. Who were these people? "Look, we just want to talk," one of them called out, placing a hand on the doorframe. "We know she's inside." "It's not safe for her out here." Jake felt the woman beside him tense, her grip tightening around his fingers. He could see the glint of the silver he'd seen before it hadn't been a knife. It was a pendant she wore, the only visible memento of a life that felt far removed from this chaos. "What do you want?" Jake demanded, stepping protectively in front of her. Inside, he was trembling, wondering what it would take to keep them both safe. The man's eyes smirked, a chilling sight. "Everything she has," he said smoothly, "and we can ensure her baby's future, and hers." The tension crackled, and as Jake tried to formulate a plan, the world around him blurred. He was trapped between the primal instinct to protect and the overwhelming fear of what these men might do. Then suddenly, the sound of screeching tires split the air as headlights flooded through the gas station windows. Were they here to help or create more chaos? Jake's heart raced, realizing he had to make a choice fast. Would he lead them toward the unknown help, or face the threat head-on? The roof trembled as the sounds of escalating chaos wrapped around them like a vice. What would he risk to save her? The headlights flashed like skeletal fingers through the gas station's grimy windows, casting sharp shadows against the walls. Jake's heart hammered against his ribs, pounding with the urgency of the moment. He squinted past the two men outside, trying to see who was in the vehicle. Was it salvation or a deeper ambush? "Jake." The woman's voice trembled, but he didn't need to look at her to know that fear had taken residence in her eyes. Everything inside him screamed to protect her, to keep her safe, but what if that choice led them into a trap? "Stay behind me," he muttered, positioning himself directly in front of her as he faced the men blocking their escape. The taller one crossed his arms, a sinister grin creeping across his lips, while the other shifted restlessly. "Good to see you two are getting cozy," the smirking man said, his tone dripping with mockery. "You don't want to make this harder than it needs to be. Let her go." "You've got no business here," Jake shot back, trying to sound tougher than he felt. His palms were slick with sweat, and adrenaline coursed through him, amplifying his instincts to fight or flee. "I think we both know that that's not true," the second man said, stepping closer, shadows deepening around him. The panic in Jake's chest intensified as the other man moved slightly, revealing a glimpse of something metallic peeking from beneath his jacket. A weapon? A burst of noise erupted outside as the new vehicle's engine roared, tires screeching against the asphalt, doors slamming. Jake's blood ran cold. Was it a distraction? Now's our chance. He snapped. He grabbed her wrist and pushed the door handle down, praying it wouldn't be locked. To his surprise, it swung open even as panic swirled inside. "Quick!" he urging her out the door. But as they stepped onto the pavement, the gas station lights flickered and went out, plunging them into near darkness. "Jake!" she cried out, just as icy grip encircled his arm. He spun, facing the looming figures, who had moved silently closer. One of them was now standing directly in front of him, a menacing grin that dripped confidence. "You really think you can run?" the man taunted as the dim outline of the other approached from behind, blocking the entrance they had just escaped. The headlights from the vehicle behind painted everything in harsh light once more, revealing the chaos that erupted. It wasn't just an ordinary stop anymore. Sirens wailed from multiple directions, and figures spilled into the gas station from every side. Who were these people? Were they friends or wolves coming to pick off the vulnerable? Get back inside. A voice boomed, piercing the tension like a bullet. A group of uniformed officers swarmed forward, their badges glinting in the headlights. Run! Jake shouted, instinctively pushing the woman toward the side of the building. The sudden influx of officers momentarily distracted the men blocking their path, giving Jake hope, but before they could dart away, the tall figure called out. Get the baby, Ella. They'll kill you if you don't come with us. Her face paled, and Jake felt her body stiffen beside him. What does that mean? He demanded, but she was already slipping into panic as the reality of her situation became clearer. Just go, Jake. Please. She urged, her voice shaking. In that moment, Jake's mind raced. What did they know? What were they willing to do to possess her and her child? The lines of danger blurred as sirens swelled, drowning out the clamor of uncertainty that fogged his thoughts. As he made to pull her away, an explosion of sound punched through the air, causing the world to pulse and spin wildly around him. Gunshots? He stumbled, but her hand tugged him back. We can't stop. They'll find us. As they sprinted into the night, answers raced out of reach, swirling into the chaos. Jake's heart raced. Could they truly escape? Or was everything about to unravel into a nightmare? What was it that had drawn them here into this tangled web of secrets and despair? And when the truth stormed out of the shadows, would it tear their lives apart forever? Jake's feet pounded the pavement as they fled into the heavy shadow of night, but the taste of panic hung bitter in the air. The sirens wailed closer, mingling with his rapidly escalating heartbeat. He risked a glance back, and saw chaos unfold in the gas station. Officers grappled with the hooded figures, their shouts crashing like waves against the night. Jake, what do we do? Ella gasped, pulling at his arm as if it would tether them to safety. Her face was pale, illuminated by the flickering lights in the distance, and for the first time, he noticed streaks of fear etched deep into her features, lines formed not just by the night, but by the weight of secrets he didn't yet understand. Just keep running, he urged, pushing her forward. He didn't have the luxury of stopping to think. Behind them, he could hear voices rising, angry and commanding. The pressure was mounting with every jarring step, a sense that something unspeakable was waiting in the wings, but as they ducked into a narrow alley, their brief reprieve shattered like glass. The sound of heavy footsteps approached, echoing off the walls. Jake reached for Ella, pulling her behind a rusty dumpster. We need to hide. Why are they after me? She whispered, looking up, her eyes wide and shimmering with tears that hadn't yet fallen. There was a truth lodged in her throat, heavy and choking. Jake could sense it, but he didn't know how to voice his own fears. We'll figure it out, he insisted, though uncertainty clawed at him like a predator. Just as their breaths began to synchronize, a set of figures loomed at the alley's entrance, two shadows stepping into the moonlight, their features twisted with malicious intent. Jake's stomach knotted tightly. They weren't just after her, they were hunting them both. Come on, Ella, he murmured, desperate for a plan. We can't let them. They know too much, she interrupted, voice barely above a whisper. They'll kill us if they catch us. In that moment, a light flickered in the back of her eyes, something that screamed. She held the puzzle pieces in her hands. What do you mean? He pressed, though his mind already fearfully suggested the answer. I worked with them before. I was a part of something, she stammered, but the weight of it overwhelmed her. I need to face them. It's the only way. They'll never stop. No. Jake shook his head fiercely. I'll protect you. We can find another way. But the determined fire in her eyes doused his instincts. It was clear she was wrestling against something far bigger than both of them. The footsteps grew louder, drawing near, and urgency hardened Jake's resolve. Listen, Ella, he said, heart racing. What if we took a side door from this alley? We could hook around to the other street. Her gaze searched his, vulnerability wavering beneath layers of leftover strength. We won't survive without the baby if they find out. The realization hit him like a punch. It seemed the stakes were rising with every whispered truth. What would they do to reclaim something they felt entitled to? What would they do to Ella? Then we have to take control, Jake said sharply. No more running. We'll hit them hard. I promise you, we'll figure this out together. What if it's too late? She breathed, eyes pleading. Together. No matter what. Just as he turned to step out, a voice sliced through the night, low, menacing, familiar. You really think you can run? Jake's instincts kicked in. The man from earlier. This was the moment where all his fears could either become reality or disintegrate into smoke. Go! He shouted, shoving Ella toward the opposite end of the alley. They bolted just as the echo of gunfire split the air again. Every instinct in his body screamed danger, but he moved forward. What lay ahead was unknown, but the fight was just beginning, and as a chilling laugh rolled through the darkness, Jake wondered if they stepped out of the frying pan and into the fire, or if salvation was finally within reach. The alley swallowed them whole, shadows dancing violently as they sprinted toward the faint lights at the end. Jake's heart raced like a runaway train, drowning out the fear that gnawed at his gut. Ella stumbled next to him, her breath labored, but her resolve seemed to compound with every step. Where to now? She gasped, pushing trepidation aside as they skidded to a halt at the alleyway's mouth. The world outside looked eerily tranquil, streetlights casting pools of yellow over the cracked pavement. Left, Jake whispered, eyes darting to any movement. We need to blend in. If they see us. But before he could finish, a scream ripped through the night, a woman's desperate cry that shattered the momentary calm. It was a sound that pulled sharply at his instincts, followed by chaos, a scuffle, shouts laced with urgency. Keep moving! He barked, dragging Ella by the hand. The city was waking up, but not in the way they needed. Sirens wailed, shadows danced. As they rounded the corner, Jake spotted a lone taxi idling by the curb, its light flickering like a beacon of hope. Without hesitating, he yanked the door open and nearly shoved Ella inside before sliding in beside her. Drive! He shouted to the driver, a weary-looking man with gray stubble and wide eyes. What's going on? The driver asked, glancing nervously at the rearview mirror. Just drive. Anywhere. Ella shouted, her panic sparking the air like static. The driver hesitated, but a chilling sound, a distant shout, urgent and accusing, made him comply. The taxi lurched forward, but Jake's body stayed tense, waiting for an unseen hand to grip them, to yank them back into chaos. Where to? The driver asked as they barreled down an empty street. Just keep going. Jake said, jaw clenched. He felt Ella's hand tighten around his. The connection was a bubble of comfort, even as the world threatened to burst it. Do you know them? Do you know who wants you? He pressed, trying to keep her focus. The fear flickering in her eyes needed to be channeled. Yes. She appeared to steady herself, face pale. I was part of a corporate espionage ring. I didn't know it was that sinister when I joined. That's why they're after me. I know too much. Her voice shook on the last words, a crimson thread of panic. You have to tell me everything, Ella. They won't stop until they get what they want. The driver's eyes grew wide in the rearview mirror, but Jake ignored him. The stakes had never been higher. Ella stared out the window, as if seeking answers in the flood of streetlights. It was just supposed to be data. We were gathering intel for a merge. But then it spiraled. They started dealing with people who could hurt others. Her breath shook. I got scared. I didn't want to be involved anymore. Why didn't you go to the cops? Jake pressed, though he assumed the answer was painted in her fear. They couldn't protect me from them. She paused, swallowed hard. I'm pregnant with my boss's child. They wanted to keep it under wraps. They won't just kill me. They'll go after him too. The weight of that bombshell landed like lead in Jake's stomach. All the pieces fell into a catastrophic alignment. This conspiracy reached beyond what either of them imagined. What's your boss's name? He asked, his voice steady even as thoughts spiraled in chaos. You don't understand, she said, almost pleading now. He is tied to the highest power in the city, the kind that makes people disappear. Then we expose them, he said, a resolve deepening inside him. We'll take the fight to them. The driver's voice cracked through the tension. You better make it quick. I don't want to get caught up in whatever mess you've got going. Just then, the cab slowed, and Jake's heart froze. Ahead, red flashing lights illuminated the street, a barrier of police cars lining the road. Get out! Jake shouted, yanking the door open. They didn't have a choice but to run again. What awaited them on the other side of that wall could seal their fate or open a doorway to salvation. And as they fled from the taxi, the echoes of their choices lingered. Were they stepping into a trap, or finally seizing their chance to break free? The night was far from over. The shadows were closing in. The moment Jake's feet hit the pavement, the world around him transformed into chaos. The red and blue lights of the police cars clawed at the edges of his vision, leaving him momentarily blinded. He grabbed Ella's arm tightly, pulling her behind a nearby dumpster as heavy footsteps thundered behind them. Stay low, he whispered, biting back the adrenaline surging through his system. They crouched, breaths shallow and rapid, the sounds of shouting officers drowning out their fears. Do you think they're after us? Ella's voice trembled, panic flaring in her eyes. Maybe. Jake strained to listen. We need to find a way to get through. Filtering through the raucous voices and slamming car doors, he caught snippets of chaos officers speaking of a missing informant. Every word knifed into him, chilling his core. They weren't just in a mess, they were in the eye of the storm. We can't stay here, he said, heart pounding. If they catch us. He leaned out just far enough to catch sight of the nearest police vehicle. An officer was peeling away from a group, casually scanning the street. Let us move. In one smooth motion, Jake yanked Ella to her feet, pulling her along, darting behind cars and phone booths. They zigzagged, desperate to remain unseen as they darted into a shadowy side street. The clamor faded slightly as they slipped into another alley, but it didn't last. Ahead, a figure loomed dark, menacing. Instinct kicked in, and Jake pushed Ella behind him. Who's there? He barked, voice steady despite the dread crawling up his spine. Chill. It's just me. The man stepped forward, revealing a tattooed face hidden under a hood. Jake, right? Jake narrowed his eyes. How do you know my name? Let us just say I'm a friend, or at least I was, he replied, glancing nervously over his shoulder. Ella, I had no idea you were on the run. They've been looking for you. Who? What do you know? Ella's voice quivered, the fear thickening in the air. They're killers. You were stupid to leave, he said, his gaze darting back toward the streets. The moment you decided to talk, it put a target on your back. You put him at risk too. It was clear he meant Jake. The weight of those words hung heavily, a dead weight in Jake's mind. Jake's vision narrowed as the man's warning sunk deep. Look, we don't have time for this. We can't stand around waiting for them to find us, he urged. Ella, we can't trust anyone out here. Just then, a sound pierced the air, a deep, revving engine, followed by tires screeching to a halt. We're out of time. They're sending out more people, the tattooed man urged. Follow me. I know a place where we can figure this out. He turned and rushed deeper into the alley. Without thinking, Jake followed. Ella hesitated only briefly before sprinting after them, her heartbeat thundering like percussion in the silence of the surrounding night. As they dove behind another dumpster, Jake felt their surroundings close in like a vice. The alley was a labyrinth, dark and winding. Each step felt like they were plunging further into an abyss. What's the plan? Jake asked between heavy breaths, eyes scanning the alley's mouth for signs of pursuit. The man didn't answer immediately. He pulled out a cell phone, the screen illuminating his worried expression. We need to contact someone who can help. But it's risky. Risky? They're already risking our lives. Ella snapped, frustration bursting forth. "Look, I get it, but trust me, this is the best way," he insisted, more focused on the device than their mounting peril. An anxiety-laden silence hung between them, as they waited for relief or another wave of danger. Jake's stomach twisted as he glimpsed shadows moving past the alley's entrance, a flicker of movement that sent dread racing through him. Just then, a familiar sound floated through the air, the wail of sirens creeping closer, a promise of impending danger. "Now," the man said, glancing at them nervously. "Do we really trust him?" Ella whispered, her eyes wide with uncertainty, but before Jake could reply, a burst of light blinded them from the alleyway. The circle of danger tightened as a shout rang out from the street, sending them into an even deeper panic. They had to decide fast: trust this stranger or risk confronting the nightmare they were desperately trying to escape. Would they embrace the unknown or fall victim to their own fears? The call of the sirens echoed ominously, heralding what was about to come next. Jake's heart raced as fear surged through him. The sirens neared, their wailing cutting through the chaos like a knife. He had never felt so vulnerable. "Trust me, I can get us out," the tattooed man insisted, glancing at Jake and then at the encroaching light. "Where to?" Jake demanded, desperation lacing his voice. "Follow me. Just stay close." With a swift motion, the man disappeared around a corner, and without thinking, Jake took Ella's hand. Pulling her along, they dashed out of the alley and into a street, the neon signs flickering overhead like warning lights. The night air felt electric, charged with danger. Ella stumbled slightly on the cracked pavement. "Jake, I don't think we can keep running forever. We're not going to give up. Not now." He tightened his grip on her hand, their pace quickening. The dark shadow of an abandoned warehouse loomed nearby, its broken windows like soulless eyes watching them. "In there!" Jake pointed, and they rushed toward it, breathing hard, their movements desperate. Inside, the dust hung heavy in the air, thick with neglect. The floorboards creaked under their weight as they moved deeper. The tattooed man was already inside, tugging at an old board that seemed loose. "This way," he said, urgency pulsing through his words. As they crawled through a narrow opening, Jake heard footsteps crunching on the gravel outside. Panic surged anew. "What if they find us?" he whispered, his voice edged with fear. "They won tea." "Not if we stay quiet," the man hissed, barely above a whisper. They crept forward into a cramped space, a forgotten storage room cluttered with broken furniture and dusty crates. "Do you know who they are?" Ella asked, her eyes wide with worry. She pulled her knees to her chest, tremors running through her. Jake shook his head, battling the weight of uncertainty. "No. But that guy," he nodded toward the tattooed man, "seems to know something." "Jake, we need to trust him for now," Ella insisted softly, a hint of determination slipping through her fear. The tattooed man rummaged through his belongings, pulling out more gadgets and a stack of papers. "This isn't the evidence we need," he said, laying the documents before them. "This only scratches the surface. There's a lot more behind all this." "What do you mean?" Jake asked, the edges of suspicion creeping into his mind. "What are you involved in?" "Not what I'm involved in," the man said with a grim gaze. "It's what she's involved in." He pointed to Ella. "You have no idea what you're in the middle of. They'll stop at nothing to keep their secrets safe." Ella's face paled as the revelation hit. "Me? Why? What did I do?" "It's what you know," he replied, voice suddenly serious. "You became a threat the moment you opened your mouth." About a loud crash interrupted them, shattering the fragile silence. The door to the warehouse burst open, and they heard muffled voices outside, searching, relentless. "They're here!" Jake gasped, adrenaline surging as he pressed his back against the wall, eyes darting toward the shadows creeping closer. "Quick, we can't stay here." The tattooed man scrambled to his feet, urging them along. "No. We need to stay still, give it time, there's no time," he replied sharply, frustration boiling beneath his surface, eyes wide with intent. Suddenly, the lights inside the warehouse flickered. Jake could feel his breath quickening as dread enveloped him. "What if we go out there?" he ventured, calculating their odds. "They'll see us. We're done for if we're caught, the tattooed man hissed. But there's a chance at escape if we can make it to the back door. Ella looked at Jake, uncertainty dancing in her eyes. Do we trust him? Jake's chest tightened as the voices grew louder, the world outside growing darker. They had faced impossible odds before, but this felt like a point of no return. Could he put Ella in harm's way just for a chance at safety? Let us go, he decided, voice firm, but inside, a storm raged. With one last glance back toward the chaos bubbling just beyond the door, they moved toward the unknown, stepping into shadow, what awaited them on the other side? As they crossed the threshold, a fresh wave of uncertainty washed over them, threatening to pull them under. Each step felt heavy with consequence. Would it lead them to safety or to something far worse? The warehouse loomed behind them, a dark and imperfect memory as they slipped into the darkness of the alley. Shadows closed in around them, heavy like a suffocating blanket. Jake's heart thundered in his chest, every echo against the brick walls a reminder of their urgency. Keep your eyes peeled, the tattooed man urged, glancing back over his shoulder. We need to stick to the shadows. Jake nodded, the adrenaline steadying his resolve. He squeezed Ella's hand, feeling her trembling. The glow of streetlights was just a distant flicker behind them, suffocating darkness lying ahead. They moved cautiously, every sound magnifying the tension in the air. The back door leads to a series of tunnels beneath the city, the tattooed man explained, his voice a low rush. If we can get to the main passage, we can get lost among the underground maze. Wait, are you sure it's safe? Ella whispered, doubt threading through her words. Safe? He let out a breath, the weight of the world laced in his tone. Nothing is safe anymore, but it's our best shot. Suddenly, the sharp sound of footsteps pierced the darkness. Jake's heart plummeted. They ducked behind a row of trash cans, the stench of decay filling their lungs as they huddled close together. The tattooed man's eyes were fixed on the opening ahead, his jaw clenched tight. Stay down, he breathed, focus unyielding. A figure passed just inches from them, a man searching the alley with a flashlight, his silhouette slicing through the shadows like a predator hunting prey. The beam of light swept toward their hiding spot, and Jake's breath hitched. He bit his lip to keep quiet, Ella's grip tightening painfully. Let us go, the tattooed man finally whispered, the threat passing. They crept forward, slipping from cover to cover, moving deeper into the dark. The tension wrapped around them, unbearable. With every corner they turned, Jake felt the weight of their situation crushing him. Who were these people chasing them? Why was Ella involved? The questions raced through his mind, but he pushed them down. They needed focus, or they wouldn't make it. As they reached the entrance to the tunnels, a sense of desperation washed over Jake. He looked at Ella, her face pale but determined. You ready? She nodded. Let us go. The tattooed man led the way, lifting a heavy lid off the ground, revealing stony steps that disappeared into the black below. A gust of damp, cool air enveloped them as they climbed down into the abyss. Once inside, the dim light from their phones illuminated damp, graffiti-tagged walls and the worn-out earth beneath their feet. The walls seemed to whisper secrets, shadows dancing just out of sight. Every footstep felt like a race against time, an indecipherable rhythm of fear thudding in Jake's chest. Stay close, Jake urged softly as they maneuvered through the narrow tunnel. Sounds echoed behind them, the heavy boots of their pursuers growing closer. This way. The tattooed man gestured down another passageway. We need to get further in. It confused them. They veered down the new path, tension thickening as darkness consumed them again. The air grew heavier as fears tangled in Jake's mind, each step feeling like a countdown. Behind them, shouts rang out, voices mingling with the growing distance. They're gaining! He exclaimed, urgency pushing them forward. Just ahead, the tunnel opened up into a larger chamber, the walls swirling with fading colors from years past. We can catch our breath here, the tattooed man said, scanning the area. Ella leaned against the wall, pressing a hand to her forehead, still shaking. What if they find us? There's no one here. What's happening, Jake? He swallowed hard, his voice a raw whisper. I don't know, but we can't let them take you. As they caught their breath, the reality of their situation sank in. The world outside was chaotic and dangerous, but the danger in the tunnels felt different, deep-rooted. In that moment of silence, every noise sent shivers down their spines, and the weight of unspoken truths hung in the air. Suddenly, a low rumble reverberated through the ground beneath them. A tremor, or something more. The tattooed man's eyes widened, sensing the urgency. "We need to move, it's not safe to stay." Before he could finish, the darkness around them erupted in harsh light, voices coming closer. The echoes of shouts shattered their momentary peace, signaling that danger was more than just a chase. It was waiting to strike. "Run!" Jake shouted, adrenaline propelling him forward, pulling Ella and the tattooed man into the tunnel's depths where new horrors awaited. What lay ahead in the darkness was uncertain, but they knew they couldn't slow down. With every heartbeat, the stakes climbed higher. Would they uncover the truth about Ella's involvement? Or would this chase lead them to an end darker than they ever imagined? They sprinted down the tunnel, breathless and panicked, the light from their phones flickering against the damp stone walls. The harsh reality of their situation pressed in from all sides, but Jake was fueled by a singular thought: keep moving. Each echo of the shouts behind them felt like a gunshot, a reminder that they were not just running from something, they were running for their lives. "Are they following us?" Ella gasped, glancing back, her eyes wide with fear. "I don't know," Jake replied, glancing over his shoulder just once. He didn't want to waste a second fearing the worst. The tattooed man pushed ahead, leading them through the winding passages that felt more like a labyrinth. With each turn, the tunnel twisted and turned, each bend leading into deeper darkness. The sound of rushing water echoed in the distance, mixing with their pounding hearts. They ducked into a narrow alcove, pressing their backs against the cold wall. "Listen," the tattooed man breathed, ears straining to catch sounds from behind. "We can't stay here long. If they catch our scent or hear us." Jake closed his eyes, pain lacing through him. "Why are they after us? It makes no sense." "Ella," the tattooed man said suddenly, his voice sharper, "there's something you need to tell us." "What do you know about this?" She looked caught, hesitating. The weight of her truth hung between them like a frayed thread. "I don't know, I saw something I wasn't supposed to." Her voice quivered. "Something that connected to them. Who? Who are they?" Jake pressed, his voice almost frantic. "They're part of something big," she stammered, lips trembling. "It's a group," a power play. Before she could finish, a thunderous roar echoed through the tunnels, rattling the stones. It was not just footsteps, it felt alive, a creature of chaos waking in the darkness. The tattooed man's expression turned grave. "We need to move. Now." Jake held Ella's hand tighter as they dashed down another passage, but doubt nodded him. Should they know more before risking it? He felt Ella's panic radiate through their locked fingers. Every step seemed to quake beneath them, as if the very tunnels were aware of their plight. Were they even safe here? The light from their phones danced wildly against the walls, illuminating ancient markings and scrawls, messages left behind by those who had come before but weren't quite as lucky. The shadows felt oppressive, suffocating, wrapping around them like ghostly hands. Then they entered another chamber, a vast, domed room where the ceiling seemed to disappear into shadows. Stagnant water pooled in one corner, reflecting their lights but distorted like a funhouse mirror. "What is this place?" Jake murmured, suddenly aware of the heavy silence that surrounded them. It felt wrong, unnatural, as if they were trespassing in a sacred tomb. I think this might be an old access point," the tattooed man whispered, scanning the environment. "We could get out through here." But before they could move, the shadows shifted darker than the darkness itself. An ominous chill slid down Jake's spine, freezing him in place. "Get back!" the tattooed man shouted, pushing Jake and Ella behind him as a figure emerged from the depths. "Going somewhere?" The figure sneered, a voice like gravel scraping against metal. It was one of the pursuers, his face obscured but dangerous, the gleam of a weapon visible in the light. "Run!" The tattooed man screamed as he lunged forward. The chamber erupted into chaos, Jake feeling Ella's fear pulse through him like poison. They stumbled backward, desperation fueling their flight. But as they dashed toward the entrance out of the chamber, the water surged, trapping them with an unpredictable torrent. "Jake!" Ella screamed as the shadow man advanced, the weapon raised. Time slowed, and everything narrowed down to a single choice: the moment where fear met resolve. Jake had to protect Ella. He had to do something, and then, in a flicker of insanity, a new sound ripped through the darkness like a beacon, an unexpected roar, louder than the chaos. What was happening now? And would they survive to see what came next? An answer was coming, but at a steep price. The air thickened with tension as the room surged with a frantic energy. Jake's heart pounded like a drum, each beat synchronized to the chaos around him. The dark figure advanced, his face obscured, the weapon gleaming ominously. Ella's terrified gaze locked onto Jake, her eyes pleading for a miracle, and at that moment, a switch flipped inside him. "No!" Jake bellowed, pushing Ella behind him. He had come too far to lose her now. The tattooed man moved forward, but Jake knew they had to act fast. Adrenaline coursed through him, every muscle screaming for movement. As the menacing figure lunged, something primal ignited within Jake. He charged, driven by a fierce protector instinct, my mind racing faster than his feet could carry him. The roar reverberated again, a guttural sound, alien and intense. Suddenly, the water in the chamber began to swirl violently, cutting the tension and forcing everyone to steer their focus. "Now! We can't fight here!" The tattooed man shouted, urgency seeping through his voice. "Follow me!" He grabbed Ella's arm, pulling her deep into the chamber's shadowy recesses. Jake gritted his teeth, stubbornly blocking out fear, determination surging wildly as they darted away from the advancing threat. Rushing toward one of the darkened tunnels leading out of the chamber, the roar swelled, filling the air, drowning out the screams of chaos that erupted in the corridor behind. "Are you sure this way?" Ella gasped, her voice raw with panic. "Yes," the tattooed man urged, pulling her with him. "Trust me." They stumbled through the dimness, the cold damp seeping through their clothes, their breaths merging into the darkness around them. Tightening his grip on Ella's hand, Jake fought to keep fear at bay. Just as they exited into another long passage, a shockwave rippled through the floor. The air trembled and fluctuated as the man's voice echoed, desperate and angry. "Stop! You can't get away!" But then bam! A car explosion rang out. The ground shook violently, a deafening crack sounding, and a gust of flames erupted behind them, illuminating the darkness momentarily, revealing the chaos of the chase. "They found us!" Ella shouted. "We need to keep moving." Jake grabbed her and pushed onward, every fiber of his being pushing them forward. The tunnel twisted and turned, and just when Jake thought they might run into a dead end, they stumbled into another open area, an old maintenance room cluttered with gear. "Look!" The tattooed man grabbed a dusty flashlight, illuminating the room filled with old machinery. "We can hide here." Jake and Ella darted inside, the door creaking ominously as they closed it shut behind them, silence swallowing them whole. Quick breaths echoed in the small space, muffled by the heavy metal. "Ella, are you okay?" Jake murmured, turning toward her. He noted her pale face smeared with worry. "I'm scared, Jake." "Just hold on to me," he whispered. "We'll figure this out. I promise." His eyes found hers, the warmth of his reassurance cutting through the icy grip of fear. Before they could catch their breath, the world around them erupted anew, sounds of footsteps hammering nearby. The tattooed man looked tense, scanning the room for exits. "Stay here. I'll keep watch," he instructed, tension visible in his stance. "No. We're not losing you too," Jake protested, eyes wide with urgency. "If I don't keep them busy, we're all toast." With a resigned nod, Jake stepped away, though the instinct to pull Ella closer held strong. "Trust me. This is our best shot." The tattooed man turned towards the door just as the voices outside swelled. Jake felt a rush of vulnerability. Everything depended on split-second decisions. "Wait!" he called out, grabbing Ella's hand again. "Whatever happens, just remember to trust each other." A determined glint shined in her eyes. "We will." The door swung open, the tattooed man disappearing into the shadows just as the voices gained volume. The moment felt surreal, every second stretching taut until they snapped into chaos. Jake and Ella pressed their backs against the wall, heartbeats synchronized with the thudding amidst the chaos outside. He scanned the room, looking for possible exits or tools they could use. What unfolded next was a blur of shadows and shouting. The muffled voices grew closer, and Jake felt a rush of urgency wrap around them like a tightly wound band. What if they were found? Then a distant roar reverberated again, the sound of something big lurking just around the corner. Fear clawed at Jake's insides. Were their pursuers unleashing even darker forces? Ella whispered softly, terror creeping into her voice as the vibrations intensified around them. I know, he replied, the weight of the moment pressing down. Just stay close. But before they could strategize, the door burst open, forces spilling forth, eyes scanning for them. The tattooed man was engaged in a fierce standoff just outside. Go! He shouted. Get to the vent. Trust me. Without hesitation, Jake yanked Ella toward an old ventilation shaft, a narrow escape route just big enough for them to squeeze through. I'll go first, he urged, quickly squeezing inside, pulling her in as the chaos unfolded behind them. The moment spun, adrenaline surging along the tight corridor, leaving everything behind. With one final anxious glance back, Jake closed his eyes, focusing on forward motion. The grip of panic loosened as the sound above them faded. We're almost there. He breathed, scooting further into the cramped space until they emerged into the night sky, drawn up into a world shimmering with colors now so far removed from danger. But then, even with a breathtaking sense of freedom, they had emerged not entirely unscathed. Jake studied the streets below, their winding paths stark and silver, reflecting everything they fought for. Beneath the moonlit sky, Jake turned to Ella, eyes bright like fierce embers burning with determination. We made it. But would making it mean escaping their threats? Or would secrets still linger in the dark corners, ready to strike again? The night pulsed with potential, the air electric with the thrill of survival. Hand in hand, they stepped toward an uncertain but hopeful path ahead, ready to claim their truth together, and as dawn began to seep into the horizon, like a whispered promise of a new day, they prepared themselves for whatever lay beyond the shadows. But one thing was clear: together, they had faced darkness, and together they would fight for the light. This was not the end. It was a beginning. And if you enjoyed this thrilling conclusion, you need to subscribe now so you won't miss our next exclusive stories. Smash the like button. Your support feeds the algorithm and helps reveal more exciting tales we have in store for you. Flood the comments with your reactions and any theories. You know we love to hear from all of you. And don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this finale. Your support means everything. Let us take this journey together.